ขณะนี้บ่าย3:20 นาที
I'm explaining about things so everybody can see everything. Well, first off, welcome to Nazareth. Thank you. I'm Raja, and I'm a local. I'm from here. I'm going to be your tour guide for the next while. And before we go on outside to the actual first century village, we're going to go through 4 rooms here inside to get more information about the history of the place and of Nazareth, and then we'll head outside to the actual first century village itself. Along the way, I'll explain more about the first century lifestyle and connect some of the things back to the Bible as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to stop and ask, and I'll do my best to answer as much as I know. And if for some reason you cannot hear me through this, please let me know because I don't know how to work with it much. So Nazareth is known for 2 great announcements that took place. The first is when Angel Gabriel appeared to Mary, telling her about the birth of Jesus. And the second is when Jesus read from the scrolls announcing his public ministry. Now, Nazareth Village is a cooperative project between local Christians and Christians around the world, and its purpose is to help people imagine and experience the world that Jesus knew and get to know him better. Now, although a lot of people come here expecting to see amazing ruins of such historical events, once we get outside, you'll get to see the actual first century village. So we're going to have houses and buildings and people with first century costume on, just living a daily lifestyle of a first century villager. And so we'll get to learn more about their lifestyle and again, connect some of the things back to the Bible. The Nazareth village itself is built up on this piece of land over here, and it's about 5 to 10 minutes walk towards the center of Nazareth, which is right over here. Now, this land is very special because it was never used since the first century. You see, they started cleaning it for the first century. Now, being a local, having a land this size, never used for over 2,000 years, that's something very, very, very special. Because I don't know if you've noticed, just by driving through Nazareth, all the houses and buildings are all really close to each other. We don't really have much of free space. So it's amazing that it's never been used since then. Now, one of the very first things that they found underground was a first century wine press that was discovered in 1996. But we'll get to talk more about it once we get to the wine press itself outside and talk about the process and how it was built and so on. One more thing that was found and rebuilt was the terraces. And outside, I'll point them out to you and we'll talk more, but I want you to know how they're made from the inside, because it's very important. See, there is the white chalky soil underneath, and then the good soil on top. So when the rain comes, the good soil would absorb the water, it would pass through, hit the white chalky soil, and instead of it getting wasted, it would pass through the terrace to water the next one on. Now, terraces are made as in big steps inside the hill, as you'll see outside and you can see on the wall over here. So it makes sense that the first step would water the one after, and so on. That's how they would take advantage of the water that they had back then. Is this authentic Turkish door? And it's made up of 2 parts. The bigger part was usually closed for protection because they would have soldiers marching around on their horses all the time. So you don't really want a soldier in your courtyard, so they'd have that closed up, and they'll use the smaller one for daily uses, allowing only one person to go in at the time. Now, the person wanting to go in has to bend his body in a certain way that leaves him defenseless. So in case of danger, any person from the inside with a faster action can stop him from causing any harm. However, the bigger door was used for loaded donkeys and camels to come into your courtyard, for the people to get the load off of them, and it was also used for bigger groups of people coming into your house for a celebration. Now, you guys are definitely a big group, so we're going to pass through as celebrators rather than one by one. Come on in.
That's also called the eye of the needle?
Some of the researchers do believe that what it was referred to, yes, but once again, you can't really know for sure. But it could be, again, also because of the use of the two doors and referring to the eye of the needle as the smaller one. Once everybody's inside, can you close the door so I'll know that everybody's in? So if you take a look at the map over here, you'll see that this land is very small, whereas Nazareth is almost in between the Mediterranean Sea and the Sea of Galilee. Now, although it's very small, it is still very important, and that's not only for religious reasons, but also because it's the crossroads between Europe, Asia, and Africa. So any man or soldier wanting to pass through from one place to the other on dry land, he has to pass through this land. So whoever ruled this land also had a lot to say in the trade world as well. So you could imagine how many empires fought to rule this land. And over here you can see the main ones in the past 2,000 years. Now, a lot of artists try to show the beauty of Nazareth throughout their paintings and drawings, but although it may seem very peaceful, Nazareth did have its share of conflicts and wars. So you might question, why did Joseph bring his family here? Well, that was for a couple of reasons. One of them is mentioned in the Bible, and the other is because Joseph needed to find a job. So they moved to Nazareth, which was the closest resident place to Tzipori, or Sepphoris, that was being rebuilt at the time to become the capital of Galilee. And Joseph, being a carpenter, found a good opportunity of work there. So they would live in Nazareth, and he'll have to go back and forth to his job every day, which is today 5 to 7 minute drive, but back then, on a donkey, it'll take much longer, of course. First, it goes back to about 100 and 150 years BC, and it was started by the Judeans who wanted to get away from the Greeks in order to fight for their religion and freedom. With time, it grew bigger, and as in today, it holds about 75,000 people. So of course, more houses needed to be built, and they started building their houses on top of the hills. Now the question is, how could they get up and down so easily and safely? That's the answer over there. Can you tell me what you see in the middle of the picture? Now, surprisingly enough, the donkey was considered to be Nazareth's first-century engineer, because he could choose the easiest ways up and down the hills, either taking the paths that the donkey would take. Eventually, they just became normal paths that people would use, and up till today, if you get a chance to visit the old city of Nazareth, you'll see exactly what you see in this photo, first-century donkey paths. So although we refer to him as a really not a wise animal, it seems to be that he's pretty smart. Please watch your heads as you pass through the door. A lot of soldiers marching around the whole time. So over here you can see a typical Roman soldier's armor, also his shield on top, and his sword. Now, the Roman sword was known to be short, sharp, and double-edged, and it was used to kill with it from both sides. You see, back then, this sword was considered to be the strongest sword found, and yet, in the Bible, it is mentioned that the Word of God is stronger than any double-edged sword. So basically, it is stronger than the strongest weapon that was found back then. And I think that's pretty cool, and I didn't understand that until I came here. And now we all heard about Herod the Great, who killed all the babies in Bethlehem trying to kill Jesus. But, you know, it was even quoted that it's better to be a pig in his palace than his son, because he killed 3 of his sons and his favorite wife, trying to keep the throne to himself. So just hearing that, you can also think about how many people were killed and executed back then. And back then, there were 2 ways of execution. The first one was a religious way, and it was a cliff, just like this one. Now, according to scholars, the height of a cliff should not be shorter than the height of one person, and not higher than the height of 2 people above each other. And a blasphemer would be tossed off of a cliff with his hands and feet tied, and he'll be tossed off head first. And then to finish the work, the witnesses on top would have to stone him to death making sure he got what he deserved. Again, this is the religious way. The political way was a cross. Again, according to scholars, this is very similar shape of a cross, of original cross. Even the kind of, how the wood is made. Personally, I had this image in my mind of the wood maybe being like softer or not with the things, but basically the more tired he'd get, eventually he wouldn't be able to lift himself up anymore and he would suffocate and die. Now, you see, here's another turning point. The bottom piece of wood is where the feet of the person would be nailed to. The one in the middle was added by the Romans for him to sit on and to help him lift himself up to breathe. Now, if you think about it, helping a person breathe on a cross is not an act of mercy.
Agony.
But exactly, it's just to prolong the death. And so he's not only suffering, but also he's suffering for a longer time. So it all adds up in the pain that he's going through until his actual death. But even more onto that, people who were crucified, it would take them a few hours up to a few days to die on the cross. So if it took them that long, the Romans would break the legs of a person, so he would no longer be able to lift himself up, but he's also in so much more pain, which would cause him to suffocate and die faster. Now, here's the thing. In the Bible, we read that Jesus was already dead before they had to break his legs. And that was also to fulfill the prophecy that no bone of Jesus is going to be broken. And it's just really interesting to see, even along the way, and as I still learn more about the first century, just to see how small things like that connect back to the Bible, and all of a sudden some verses make sense. Let's keep that in mind as we pass through to the last room over here.